Hello and welcome to the Biz Coach Show, hosted by my Biz Coaches and presented by the TLG Group, where we provide entrepreneurs with the edge they need to succeed. Your hosts today, as always, are me, that's David Macon, and Eric Whitmore. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, David. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Well, glad to hear it. Hey, we are talking about a really important topic. We're recording this in January of 2023, and a lot of the headlines right now are about AI and some of the awesome advances that have happened really in the last couple of weeks, and pretty groundbreaking on what's happening now and what's about to happen in the near future. So as Eric and I were talking, it's something that we're seeing a lot and it's impacting our clients. And so we wanted to dedicate an entire episode to talking about the disruptive power of AI. And to start things out, we're going to talk about a couple of stats relating to artificial intelligence, and then kind of get in how do we apply this to small business owners, entrepreneurs, and really any company that's listening to this, because it is going to impact the way we do business, the way we interact with our clients and our customers. So really an important topic. So a couple stats to kind of kick us off. Right now, nearly 77% of devices, so mobile devices today, use AI technology in some form or another. So already very prevalent in our world. And then thinking about the future, 84% of C-level executives believe they need to adopt artificial intelligence to drive their growth objectives. It's also predicted that the AI market is going to cap out around $190 billion by 2025. That's an annual growth rate of 36.62%. So pretty impressive. And then by 2030, artificial intelligence will add a predicted $15.7 trillion to the world's GDP, boosting it by 14%. So those are a couple stats to get us started. Eric, any stats that you have found kind of interesting as it relates to AI?
Yeah, I don't know that I have stats so much as I have empirical knowledge of my clients and how it's impacting a number of my clients. I'm not sure if I've used the reference before, but I have a digital marketing agency, and we were talking extensively about AI and more specifically about some of the different resources that he currently uses. And then the topic of Chat GPT came up, and the impact that has had in just the short period of time since they launched. I think it's version 3 was, and then version 4 is coming very soon. And it's pretty impactful. But as a digital marketing agency, one of the things they do extensively is they run a lot of copy. And currently today, there's a software they use today, which is called Jasper. And we use Jasper to write copy pretty extensively, whether it's copy for blog post or copy for marketing campaigns. And anymore, it's getting more and more to the point where you can't tell whether or not a human wrote it or AI wrote it. And quite honestly, it's actually, in some cases, it's better when AI writes it. Which is scary right? When you think about it, right?
Yep.
But when I started doing my research on the Chat GPT, based on my conversation I had with him initially, it was like, wow, this is a game changer. I mean, this is like, I don't want to jump topic too quick, but this literally goes to a speech that I saw Elon Musk do. I don't remember the platform where he was speaking at. But he actually shared, well, actually, no, it was a podcast. He was with Joe Rogan when I saw it. He'd spoke somewhere else and made this statement, but he reiterated on the podcast with Joe Rogan. He's like, yeah, I told them to slow down AI. And this is the guy that uses AI to have his, to self-driving cars, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I told them to slow down AI. He goes, I told the government to step in and slow down the use of AI because it was going to grow at a rate that we weren't going to be ready to manage. So I don't have any statistics, but that right there, that scared the snot out of me, quite honestly.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I'm sure there's people listening to this who are feeling similarly, like, hey, this could be dangerous, and I don't know if this is a good thing, and I don't know if I want it in my business, right? And a couple stats that back that up. Only about 28% of people fully trust AI, but 42% generally accept it. And so that's kind of a growing trend that's becoming more acceptable. But I definitely think, if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, hey, I've seen Terminator, I've seen the movies, I know what happens. I'm not going to let this AI in my business. It's time to kind of think about it a little bit differently, because 83% of companies consider AI as part of their strategy, or an important part of their strategy. So if you're not thinking about it, right, it's here, it's getting bigger, it's getting more prevalent. Even if you're a little uncertain, even if you're a little scared, or you're, not that 28% that fully trusts it, 83% of companies feel like it's important to understand it and apply it to their business strategy. So just kind of tie that into what you're talking about.
Yeah, and a piece that I would add to that, David, would be when you're talking about the people that are uncomfortable with it. First of all, as a life coach, one of the things we would talk about extensively was, this scares you. Why does it scare you? What behind this idea scares you? And it's the unknown. It's fear of the unknown, fear of this, right? But the idea is that to your point, there are a lot of components of this technology that are going to be super, super valuable. I mean, and I'm sure we'll get into a little bit, but when you look at the extent of what the AI can do, particularly when it comes to like entry level roles. I mean, I think I sent you a TikTok video. Was it you sent me or was I sent you? Now I can't even remember. But it was
You
the
said it
launch
to
of
me, and I was shocked that you had TikTok. So
yeah. Hey, it goes along with what I'm about to say.
oh, good. Okay.
We have to adapt or die.
Yeah.
As business owners, as entrepreneurs, that is the one thing that you have to learn to come to terms with, which is adapt or die, right?
Yeah.
The business, to your point, it is here. The larger companies that have the investable income, they're going to invest in this technology, and it's going to force the smaller business owner to adapt or die. I mean, they're going to get left behind. And, the video or picture that I'm referring to was I think it was an employee list McDonald's.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I remember that
fast
one.
food
Yep.
restaurant. Yeah, there's an
Yeah. It's
employee
all
list fast
robots.
food
All
restaurant.
robots. Not a single person.
Yes, exactly. And a drive-through, and it was literally, your order came out, and it was, and literally the entire restaurant. To your point, no employees. Maybe somebody to maintain the equipment, but nobody to take and
Yeah.
engage with the customer or anything like that. They put everything in manually and through a system and automated. That reads the voice recognition. It understands what you want. It places the order. It comes out. It's all robotics. It's crazy. So
Yeah.
when you think about that, how does a small business owner compete with that? Because you can't afford that technology today. Not the
Yeah.
average small business owner, right?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting, right? You talk about the fear of technology, and that's not new. That's not unique to AI.
No,
But
not at
I,
all.
I think what's interesting is, there's this balance of, well, what do you fear more? Do you fear the new technology, or do you fear being out of a job, or your business, crumbling because AI is replacing those jobs? And I know people are probably getting bored of stats, but I got a couple more that relate to it.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
yeah.
AI may eliminate 375 million jobs and displace up to 1 billion employees globally over the next 5 to 10 years.
That's only
So if you
12 and a
think
half
about
percent of
that,
the world's population.
yeah, and you think about that, right? Like, what are you more afraid of, learning a new technology, or being in that group of people, or right, or maybe somewhere in between? 120 million people are estimated to have to reskill or upskill in order to do their job because of the influence of AI. So, just bringing it back, right? You're going to be afraid one way or the other. You might as well be afraid, but taking steps to safeguard yourself and
Absolutely.
be future ready, right?
Yep. We have to commit to understanding what it is and being afraid of it. I honestly, if I go back and I look at the generation before us, before me, sorry, not trying to lump
Appreciate
you
that.
into my generation, David. Not that I'm referencing our ages again, but if you look at the age before me, so I'm at the beginning age of whatever comes after the baby boomer. I don't even remember anymore. But the what I remember specifically watching my father and many people my father's age, who's in his mid 70s now, go through the computer revolution, right?
Yeah.
Which I remember a conversation with my father in 1972. Well, not he had a decision to make in 1972. We had the conversation somewhere in the 1980s. I don't know. But in 1972, he was in a position where he was looking at job opportunities. He had just done his 2-year tour during the Vietnam tour, and he had done his 2-year term, and he was like, I've got a job. I can go to work for this company called Bastion Tires and do this hard physical labor type job. But it was something he knew and understood and was familiar with, or learn and adapt to this computer thing. And the guidance he got at that time was computers are just a fad. They're here today, gone tomorrow. They're not going to last. And, so my dad went the route that he was comfortable with, as opposed to, stretching himself a little bit. And consequently, that definitely limited his options, not in the next 10 years, but in the next 15 to 20 years, dramatically limited options. And consequently, my uncle, one of my mother's sisters, so he went on to get into the computer revolution, or get involved in the computer revolution. Consequently, went on into the insurance industry. At one point, worked at Sperry Univac, which I think was a computer technology company. I can't even remember exactly what they did anymore. But that led into insurance, because insurance companies were one of the first ones to adapt to computers and using technology to do their assessments and all that kind of stuff. And he went on to become a president of a company and made millions of dollars and became very successful.
Yeah.
Not that my father wasn't successful, but the options that he had access to were greatly limited because he didn't take the time to learn that technology until he's much more advanced in his age.
Yeah. No, and it's computers. Then it was, internet's a fad, and then it's,
Yes.
Bitcoin's a fad, and then I mean, it's just we have this tendency, right? Of course, there's early adopters, the bell curve, and all that,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
But most people, right, we're kind of at that stage where the early adopters have really kind of taken this, and there's tons and tons of AI startups, and so that ship has kind of already sailed. So the determination is, are we going to be, a laggard at the end of the bell curve, or are we going to embrace it a little bit earlier on? And I think what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as an entrepreneur, you have to be on the front end of that bell curve. Maybe you're not at the initial slant upwards, but somewhere in it before it peaks, you've got to get, as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to get in the front end of that bell curve, because the reality is, by the time you peaked, you've missed the opportunities that were there. Like right now, I was doing some research with somebody, and they had mentioned that Chat GP, we're talking about Chat GP as one of those AI platforms. And there's a unique opportunity right now for somebody who's ambitious and wants to create a small revenue, or wants to create a business opportunity that nobody knows what it costs to utilize that software right now.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so consequently, if you didn't know the fact that it's actually, the version 3 is out there for free.
Yep.
You could volunteer to do a whole bunch of copywriting and different jobs, tasks like that, for somebody who doesn't know that it's available. To go ahead and do the work, perform the work, have it all done through AI at a fraction of zero cost, basically, for all intents and purposes, and then provide it and receive revenue for those services provided, right? Because right? It goes back to the old story, the plumber that shows up for the banging pipe, and he comes in and he twists the nut, and he sends him a bill for $10,000, and the guy says, "I want an itemized bill for this," and he says, 1 cent for the nut to twist, for the nut, and $9,999.99 for the knowledge to know to twist which nut where, right? It's that's legitimately, whenever these early adoption opportunities present themselves, that's what it is. That early end of the front end of that bell curve is where those opportunities are created, and a lot of money is made and capitalized on during that period of time. By the time you reach the top end of that bell curve, which is around the 50% threshold, depending on where that's at, all those opportunities are missed out on. And then it's how much of the backside of that bell curve are you able to capitalize on, right? So if you missed the front end, you don't catch some of the back end, then you missed any opportunity to really do that. To benefit from it, I should say.
Well, and to that end, right, if AI is a train and we're still standing at the station, it's moving very quickly, and we need to jump on. In fact,
great analogy.
300% of businesses, or the increase in businesses using AI has increased 300% in the last 5 years. So just let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah.
The early adopter ship has already sailed. So now we're just trying to get on the train. We've kind of
Yep.
missed the front two cars, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Great point. Yeah. The luxury cars have passed.
yes,
We are now to the common cars, and and the decent ones are in the first
yeah,
half. So we need to make
that's
sure that we
right.
get into the next. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a funny point. Actually, great analogy. You got one more there, so go ahead and share that.
Yeah, and I think just why are companies doing it? I think that's ultimately right. Putting myself in the shoes of somebody listening to this, why should I do it? Yes, I understand if I don't, I might be out of a job or my business might collapse, and that's scary. But what's the benefit? So I don't want to do it just to avoid some pain. What's the benefit it's going to bring to me? And so what a lot of people are reporting. So for example, sales leads, right? Leads are a big deal. If you work in a sales or service based industry, leads are critical. AI algorithms can increase your leads by as much as 50%, right? So
That's
hopefully
amazing.
somebody's ears perked up on that one. Or 80% of employees saying that AI helps to improve their productivity. So imagine that for you as an entrepreneur who's wearing 10 different hats, 15 different hats. How can you be more productive? But also, your team of whether it's 2 people or 200 people, what if all of them were more productive? How much more work and clients and all that could they take on by utilizing AI? So don't do it just to avoid the negative things, but there's a lot of positivity and that can come into your business if you adopt this early. So yeah, a lot of great stats out there on AI adoption for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time to put that together because it's eye opening when you start digging in. I know the early portions of AI, we all experienced it, whether we realized it or not. But the front end of every call system is
Right.
AI, right? It's all
Yeah.
software laden. It's any call center anymore. It's prompting. It's going through a series of questions to get you to the channel, the department that you need to be in. And by the way, every sequence that is created, it's a flow chart, right? Every sequence that's created by an engagement with a client is giving them data points.
Yeah.
How many people call in and request their PIN number to be reset? How many people call in to have to have something else done in their account, right? How many people call in to check their balance, right? I'm thinking credit card companies, for instance. And I don't care which industry, whether it's financial services, insurance, anybody in those really advanced services where there's a lot of customer service touch points. How can we reduce the human element, or better yet, create a better environment for the human element? For the last not for the last, I would say up until probably around 2015 or so, there was a push from early 2000 to about 2015. Everybody was going overseas. It was before that, but everybody was complaining about all these jobs are going overseas for call centers. That was a big issue. It was everybody was throwing their hands up in the air about it. And somewhere along the way, are like, well, how can we do that better? Well, there's something called artificial intelligence that can replace and can actually be programmed and learn at a faster capacity than a human being can. Well, there's discussions about that, but we won't get into that today.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
idea being is that because of the programming languages, the way it's designed, it can reread and review content faster, right? Over and over and over. So it learns every time it has a conversation. Well, as human beings, one of the challenges that we have, we don't always learn from our instances.
Right.
Right? We should, and there is a learning opportunity, but we don't always capture the learning opportunity. Whereas a robot or an artificial intelligence does in every time because it's programmed to do that. So consequently, the first time you ask me, where I don't know, I'm even struggling right now, but how would I get this particular information? Well, the first time you're in your head, you map it out and say, okay, first you do this, then you do this, then you do this. Well, the AI will immediately register that. And the next time that question comes up, they've got it.
Yeah.
They don't have to go through it 10 times to figure it out, to remember to create a sequence and have that sequence events become an actual distributable piece of information. The AI does it automatically.
Right.
And so when you think about how that impacts all these call centers, and so I'll give you some quick piece here. At My Biz Coaches, one of the things so December was our breakthrough month. That was we really turned the corner in December. It was a huge leapfrog, 3x in a month that is typically it is typically probably one of the harder months for us to sell coaching memberships, right? Coaching programs in December, because there's other distractions, right? Obviously, I gotta buy my stuff from Lululemon, or wherever else you're buying your clothes from, and consequently, what I found was the first thing was uh, lead sourcing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been working with. I mentioned earlier, we're using Jasper to write copy. Well, using Jasper, I can bump out copy at about 10 times what my resources were before, which was me, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. But I can pump it at about 10x now. So my email sequencing, my copywriting sources, right? I mean, even presentations, like putting together a presentation, I can actually get copy written and our content provided for blog posts. I can do that in minutes, which used to take me an hour. I used to spend an hour a day writing a blog.
Wow.
I can literally do that in less than a few minutes.
Yeah.
That same blog. It's written in my tone. It's written in a professional, slant and all these kind of things. And to the point now where I've used it enough times where I can't tell if I wrote it or the computer wrote it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm using a software solution that is 3 or 4x less than what's available right now. So when you think about what just pumping that kind of content out, so we started setting goals for this year and our growth and what opportunities we have. And as we started figuring out, we were like, well, wait a minute. One of our opportunities is lead flow. So you mentioned lead flow earlier, right?
Yep.
We've actually been able to go through now, and we'll be able to provide leads to a client at, I'm going to guess, 20% of what they were paying for leads before, because of a couple of strategies we've been able to. I won't say we developed it. We just were able to back engineer.
Yeah.
What
You were
some
early
other
adopter.
Yeah. No, well, we're back engineering. All right. We weren't early adopters. We're definitely a little bit later to we're not on the second car, the first two cars anyway. But what we were able to do is re-engineer, back engineer into what some marketing agencies are doing. And as we kind of recognize what they were doing from email campaigns and some other pieces, we'll be able to like 10x our lead flow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So and at a fraction of the cost that we were doing it before.
Yeah.
So then we'll be able to provide that and share that with our clients. So again, one of the values of working with a coach, and not to keep putting that out there, but so we're invested in doing that due diligence for our clients so that they don't have to do that due diligence.
Right.
And then we educate them and bring them along and show them how to use the technology.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think, something else you talk about is, or we should talk about is, you talked about the customer service perspective, but also the ability to personalize things to your clients, your customers. AI has a lot of options with that, right? And we know personalized messaging, personalized marketing, personalized recommendations, personalized follow up, right? All of
Yep.
those things equate to more sales, and so that's another powerful benefit of AI is not just faster, not just more efficient, but also more personal. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't think about, right? It's a
Yes.
computer, it's a robot, right? How
They'll
could it
never
ever?
think to ask
Yeah.
for. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, how could it be more personal than a human? And the reality is it can be, because it has all of those data points, a million data points about you over all these different sources. And every time you interact with it, it gets smarter about you, the individual who's typing into the chat bot or calling in or using the software. And it's pretty remarkable. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about and is really pretty powerful. And you see that with how you do ads nowadays. I mean, you can get so niche with the ads that you post, down to Utah bulldog lover, coffee lover, all those things, and have a custom ad just for that personality type. And it's just going to get even more narrow, which is good, I think, for a lot of marketing, and be more personal. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. So over the years, one of the things, way back in the day when I was working my way through college, working in a bar, right? what I realized very quickly was the more that I impressed my client with knowing or anticipating, that's what the better word, anticipating what it was they wanted before they wanted it, was what led to my increase in compensation, right? Tips, basically. And there was a direct correlation with my ability to impress the client with my understanding of what they wanted, my anticipation of what they were going to need in advance of them needing it, always led to better tips,
Yeah.
right? Which, for whatever reason, is lost on most people that work in the industry today. But and there's a few occasions where
True.
I find somebody who's a phenomenal server, whether
Yeah.
that's a bartender or a waitress or a waiter, it doesn't a barmaid, whatever. When you find those people that are really good at that, and more importantly, if you're the kind of person like I am, I frequent the same places and the same servers. My wife and I will ask for the same server at the restaurant, at our favorite restaurant. I mean, talk
Yeah.
about routine, right?
Yeah.
We not only do we go to the same restaurant regularly, but we ask for the same server, and we'll come on the days when that server is working,
Yeah.
right? But there's a reason for it, and it's, to your point, it's the customization. We don't have to ask for what we want to drink. She already knows.
Right. Yep.
She'll literally just confirm, and she'll remember. Oh, you wanted the Macallan. Yes, I would. And you want it with the ice ball. Yes, ma'am. And you make it a double. Absolutely. Right. I mean, it's like that. And she knows. I don't have to tell her anymore. She just gets it. Right. Same thing with my wife. She knows exactly what wine my wife wants. Or occasionally she'll tease her and she say, is it a this type of wine night or is it a this type of wine night? You know, it's like that.
Yeah.
Literally, she knows. She even knows the variations of my wife's
Right.
preferences. Right.
Yeah.
Imagine if you could program that into the
Yeah.
AI so that the AI does it every time, regardless of experience. Imagine using that platform that woman was able to develop, and imagine her interaction with us as a software platform, software, the code written, right? Imagine you could take that then and introduce it to all the other, because we're relatively frequent restaurant, visitors. If you could put that in a dozen restaurants so that we got the same type of experience every time we walked in. Now, there's something to be said for the actual engagement level and all that other. I mean, there's something else for that. But imagine that same person gets that same type of experience that they're accustomed to every time.
Yeah.
Right. In multiple settings. I don't have to go to the same restaurant every time. I would
Right.
get the same experience regardless of what restaurant I went into. It would
Yeah.
dramatically improve my level of fulfillment when I'm going out and enjoying myself at a nice dinner, right? It's but anyway, there's obviously something to be said in the personality and all the other components of that. But just getting my order right, quite honestly, is my biggest frustration when eating out.
Yeah.
I specifically want this, not this. I want it this way, not that way, right? And knowing that person's going to get it right every time is pretty significant. Now that's me, right? I'm a pretty, and then David, I know your love for cheeseburgers, bacon cheeseburgers, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, but I mean, if you didn't have to, if it would just confirm, hey, David, we know you like X. Would you also like this? Because 80% of the time you order this to go along with that.
Yeah.
Right. It might share the statistics, but because it knows that 80% of the time that you order that, it offers it. And you're like, yeah. And so I'll go back to my waitress analogy. When we after dinner's done, she'll come out and say, so did you want the tiramisu tonight? And I'm like, no, not really. But because you asked, now I feel obligated that I have to go ahead and get it.
Yes. Yep.
The point is, how much would that improve your experience? From a business owner's perspective, how much does that improve bottom line profits?
Yeah.
How does that improve customer experience, right? And from an owner's perspective, they're getting a consistent result every time.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do with human interaction.
Right.
Because it's hard to train people to do that job that way. They really have to care enough about the job to learn to do it that way. And that's not the easiest thing to train to. I mean, after training thousands of salespeople, retail salespeople, how hard is it to duplicate those results time and time again, every time?
Right. Oh yeah. It's I mean, very difficult and it's individual. And I think that's one of the other things that's worth noting, and you kind of talked about, is, and you go back to our last episode, we talked about, hey, when you lose somebody, it takes a while to get them back, the next person back to the same speed. That's not the
Right.
case with AI, right? Depending on your industry, it could be 30 days, 90 days, 60 days to get somebody fully proficient. And even then they still make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's
Right.
100% all of the
No,
time.
no.
And the people that are, we probably can't afford to hire as a small business, right? So that's important. But yeah, consistency is critical, and just because we're on a little bit of a learning topic, it's incredible what AI can do to personalize learning. So it'll notice,
Oh,
hey,
great point.
this individual is struggling with this concept. So for that person, we're going to add more scenarios, more simulation, right? Whatever around that particular topic for that person and the way they learn. So think about that for, not only, corporate education, which of course is my big focus, but think about that for the school system. Think about that for higher education. Think about that
Totally.
for upskilling. I mean, there's so many applications of just personalized learning, but also consistency in how things are presented and taught. So it's remarkable. But yeah, going back to your main point, consistency in your business is critical, and AI absolutely helps deliver that.
Yeah, agreed. And if you look at, the customer service component, I mean, I can see this just chewing up customer service call centers.
Oh yeah,
Right. I mean, it literally, I mean, and the funny thing about that is having never managed those scenarios, but knowing from an arm's length what that experience is like, and seeing what that is to manage that, that's something I would not want to manage. But
yeah,
quite honestly, it's a job I wouldn't want to do. And
right,
I know that there is a percentage of people out there that would enjoy that enjoy that job, that role, that job, serving those clients. And I don't know that AI is going to replace all customer service in the near future, but it will replace a lot of it. And then
yeah,
you would just be down to the smallest percentage of people that are necessary for the most escalated situations.
right,
But
yeah.
eventually with AI, even that would be theoretically replaced.
Yeah. So interesting. It related to this. You brought up something about, just like the personality or maybe the dynamics of the interaction. So one of the things that is coming with AI, just again, they're thinking of everything,
Right.
is having the same, let's call it base code for that AI chatbot, let's say, or maybe call in and it's a voice bot, whatever. So what they do is they program different personalities into it. So if
Right.
they realize that this person likes this style of interaction, all of a sudden you start to see, maybe the messaging kind of changes to their style and their preference. Or I think, there's different personas that they develop within these AI models. So you may find a couple that work great for your business or your industry. And so you could kind of, as it grows, you're going to have probably, 100 different AI personas based on how you want your clients dealt with in your industry or how they want to be dealt with. I mean, it's groundbreaking what's happening. It's happening very fast.
Yes. Well, I'll give you yet another example. We're doing some research on some software for I don't know if they call it speech. It's if I want so audiobooks, right? As you know, I've published a few books. I've never gone back and done the audio, so I've been actively looking at that. And so I recently was researching software that would actually do the reading of the audiobook. So because that's a very time consuming task to do that. And I'm still debating on whether or not it makes sense for me to do it or for the, to use. But so I'm looking at the software, and that particular software comes with 40 different voice options.
Yep.
Very human. Again, I believe that and maybe it's because I was looking at it and knowing it was software, but I'm like, I would say 80 or 90% of the time that I'm listening to the voice, I can't tell the difference. There's still a 10 or 20% variation that I can in the tonations and stuff like that, but it's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
What was really super interesting, you're talking about customization. Well, would you like a voice with an English uh,
Yeah.
accent
Yeah.
or a Scottish accent or an Australian accent? I was like,
Right.
yeah, actually, that might be kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, it's only a matter of time before it'll take your voice sample and read
That's
it in your voice.
I was just gonna say, it was like, how about we take my voice and put an English accent? I'm curious
Yeah.
what my wife would think about that.
Yeah. Well, inevitably, what we'll do is we'll have the chat bot write our podcast for us, and then we'll use deep fake technology and AI voice simulation, and then it'll present it for us. And then we'll just sit back, and the show will be done.
Totally.
That's
Yeah,
coming soon.
there's a software out there for you were mentioning facial recognition
Yeah,
earlier, but there's a software out there today that it takes humanized versions. Again, I'd say it's 80-90% accurate. There's
yeah,
still that portion of it you can tell it's not human, but that's now.
yeah,
What does that look like in 5 years from now? I mean, eventually you're getting to the point where you're looking at a video and you're going to know if it's live or it's Memorex. I mean, that's
yeah.
literally that's a way old reference that you probably don't understand. But I just realized it as I said it. But that's probably like it's like the quote from Rocky. He's like, that was the 80s. He goes, actually, that might have been the 70s. But we'll get to a point where, to your point, literally in a podcast, it could be a video person with a video
Yeah,
voice. It's all pre-programmed, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
right. Yeah. Whole
Crazy. Well,
movies
we'll
even.
keep it real here, right?
Hey, I'm an adopter, man. No. Until I can figure it out, yes, I'll be live with you.
There you go. Okay.
Awesome. Well, I think we're a little about 30 minutes in. I think we may want to move to a couple of key takeaways if you're cool with that, Eric, and then maybe talk
Absolutely.
about how to apply it. So, just kind of recap a couple of things, and if it sparks any of your thoughts, definitely feel free to share. But one of the key takeaways from our show today is AI can drastically increase efficiency, and I think that's really important. I feel like we've touched on that one a lot. Another key takeaway is improved decision making. So whether
Mm.
that's analyzing data or predictive analytics, it can definitely help with that decision making. We haven't touched on that one quite as much. So anything you want to add on that one, Eric?
Yeah, valid point. And you know what's interesting is was it I think it was this year, it was last year, was the first time I really paid attention to it with the NFL. They're talking about the analytics in NFL, right? Like
Mhm.
this catch was a 14% catchability rating or whatever. This throw was an 8% possibility or whatever,
Yeah,
and he completed the pass, right? And it's like, but that's all coming from, and I don't remember the name of the company now. I don't pay that much attention to that stuff, but it was interesting, right? Because they're putting
yeah,
more and more of these analytics. And to your point, a lot of statistics, and I picked the NFL because I'm most passionate about that particular sport.
I do.
But one of the things that even in coaching now, right? They're able to, because of the analytics, and this was in baseball long before it got football and basketball,
Right,
but they're able to they'll quickly analyze, and they know the statistics going into the scenario. So when it comes to decision making, for instance, the probability of getting a 2-point conversion versus a standard extra point kick.
right. Yeah,
This particular team is at 42%. So they're like, we're just going to roll the dice based on those numbers. If we get it 42% of the time, if you add up the number of points that we'll gain with those number of opportunities versus if we just kick the single point every time, we'll actually get more, even though we're only to 42%. I don't know that works out the
yeah,
math wise, but you follow my logic.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're able to analyze that and consequently make the decisions like that because they already know the data in advance.
Right.
They
Yeah,
go into the decisions knowing, right? Or that the for instance, your team has a tendency to go for extra two this many times, or an onside kick, or whatever it might be. But when you consider those types of analytics in your business, for instance, inventory management, that would be a huge place, right? For businesses that manage inventory and restaurant industry, talk
yeah,
about inventory management, raw
right,
food costs, right? I mean, that's got to be by far and away, outside of labor costs, the biggest gap and the biggest opportunity that determines a successful, profitable restaurant and a restaurant that's barely making money.
yeah,
And it literally comes down to food waste,
yeah,
right? And so over the years, we figured out ways to be creative with food waste. We donate it to the missions, or we do this, or we do that. But there's always been this, there's going to be food waste. Let's just figure out how to manage it best. But
right,
now with this type of analytics, if you're popping it all into your point of sale system, and I say point of sale, but it's the back end of it, and you're putting in how many tomatoes you buy every week based on the sales of the products and the individual products that include tomatoes in the menu, right? And you go through that, You literally could get this down to a finite number and know that on any given week, you plus or minus 10%, you should have, I don't know, 100 tomatoes or whatever that is, right? It was like, I was probably not even close, but yeah, but you follow the
I
logic,
get
right?
you.
You would
Yeah.
literally know. And so now food margin costs dramatically reduce, right? Marginal loss dramatically reduces, and you reduce food shrinkage.
Yeah.
Shoot, there was literally something I was listening to the other day. Crazy. England. I don't know the time frame when this was. This is going back quite a few years. But what they did was I'm pretty sure it was London. What they had done is they went around and they had asked people in this particular community if they'd be willing to take three chickens into their home for having to eat food waste.
Mm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, within I want to say it was in the year. I can't even remember the specifics to it now, but within a very short period of time, they introduced this. So there was 2,000 families that agreed to take these chickens in. So 6,000 chickens, whatever that cost for the community or the city, the town, whatever it was to do that. They brought the chickens in, and the chickens started eating the food waste. Within that whatever period of time, and I want to say it was like a year, they reduced food waste in the land disposal by 100,000 pounds.
Wow.
100,000 pounds of food waste that gets thrown away by the chickens eating it. And then, oh, by the way, guess what the derivative of that is? All those families now no longer have to buy eggs.
Yeah. And right now, the cost of eggs, man, that sounds pretty good.
Great add-on. I went and bought a crate of eggs the other day, and it was $30 for 60 eggs. I'm like,
insane.
I didn't remember eggs paying 50 cents an egg.
Yeah. That program sounded pretty good, Eric. Can I get some details on that?
I got to figure out how to get 3 chickens, dang it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you think about that, again, going back to the decision making, having that kind of insight and knowledge and readily available, right? Right now, today, the biggest problem with that kind of insight, only geeks like you and I are actually researching that kind of information. Yeah. Right. The reality is, if more people had that kind of information available to them, they'd make better decisions on a regular basis.
Right. Well, and on that, you can, I'm sure, resonate with this. When I started training, one of the things that I didn't do is I wasn't tracking the result, the impact, the ROI of these different trainings that we were doing. And had I done it, I would have had, 2 or 3 years more data to refer back to. And I think when you look at something like AI, it's kind of the same thing. If you're waiting to implement it, you're missing out on more data points that will help your business in the future. So it's kind of like the sooner you can do it, the sooner you start tracking these things. But nobody has time to track it, manually in spreadsheets. And sure, there's some great tools out there, but if you had, artificial intelligence that's kind of capturing all of that for you, storing it in these massive databases, right? And then it's available in the future. Not only can it tell you, how many tomatoes you need, but, seasonally over the last 3 years, we've seen an increase in ordering of tomato dishes in August, right? Or whatever. And now you benefit from all of that data, but also kind of the broader set of data. So what are other people ordering? Hey, tomatoes are trending on these 5 social platforms. So they're going to want to come in and order your tomato dish because it's all over Instagram, right? So it captures, things in the metaverse and brings them in. I mean, it's crazy what it can do, but we need to start thinking about those things, those data connections.
Yeah. And that's actually a great point too, because as you mentioned, for instance, organic became a really big thing. I don't remember how long ago it was, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And now all of a sudden there's organic menus, there's organic grocery items, there's organic this, there's organic that. Well, they start coming into restaurants because people are recognizing, hey, we're eating all these food with all these fillers and it's not healthy for us. And we're finding all these health issues that are created by these circumstances. Well, now I've got to factor that in and realize that, to your point, going out into the internet and pulling in all this particular data, there's a new, I don't want to say diet fad, but there's a new push for organic foods, and consequently, people's restaurants are going to feel that impact and they need to adjust accordingly. Yeah. Right. And so, but by getting that type of insight and data pushed to me.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. By resources that gather this information, that's super valuable to me as a business owner, because now I'm getting this data pushed to me and it's helping me make those types of decisions, but it's being gathered not just by my company, right?
Yeah.
Everything that we've talked about, generally speaking, over the years has always been, well, it's my company's data, my company's data. What if it was all companies that are related
Right.
to your business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody in the tire industry, everybody in the restaurant industry, everybody in the financial services industry, you'd get all that data aggregated and made available to you.
Yeah. Well, and that's the beauty of things like, AI or your, blockchain, which is a different technology. But now companies can feel secure. Hey, I'm okay to share this data because I'm not, sending you these files and it's not going to fall into the wrong hands, right?
Yeah,
So
agreed.
now you have more companies volunteering to share their data, creating this database. So now you can truly benchmark in ways that you couldn't before, whether it's in the US, internationally, across industries, right? And that data is amazing, and it's just going to become more prevalent.
Yeah, agreed.
So awesome. Well, we kind of touched on cost savings, so that's
Sure.
another big key takeaway that hopefully, as people are listening, they're thinking about competitive advantage, right? So staying ahead of the curve. We talked about that one.
Yep.
Personalization. We talked about one last one that we didn't really spend much time on, and would welcome any thoughts that you have is scalability, right? So that's one of the biggest challenges I know entrepreneurs face is how fast do I grow? How big? How many people, and some of those sorts of things. And AI can really help scale in a lot of different ways. So, any thoughts on that one before we go to our apply it section?
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting pieces about the scalability component specifically is, again, all those reference points, all those data points gathered and brought together for that data that you can make better decisions on, right? The predictive analytics. I'm trying to remember the reference point there. There was a specific. It's in the gaming industry.
Mm,
So when they go to do so for year, this is gonna be an extension here, and this is definitely it's back in the 70s, but no, football and betting in
mm,
general, not just football, but any sports for that matter. But you take all the data from the betting world and continue to feed it in, right? And so you use that type of data to determine who's going to win a game, and you make your bets based on the data that's been aggregated over whatever period of time, months, years, whatever, right? Well, now one of the ways that they're predicting the Super Bowl, because the predictive analytics of football games like Madden, for PlayStation or Xbox or whatever, they play the game X number of times. Let's say, I don't know, 10,000 times or whatever, and 7,522 times out of the 10,000 times, Team X wins or Team Z wins or whatever, right? And that's actually acting as the predictive analytics.
oh wow.
So, right. So think about that when you talk about scaling your business,
Yeah.
right? Okay, I'm currently a 3-store operator today. Take any franchise model that you want. I'm the 3-store operator today and I'd like to grow to 10 stores. Based on the economy the way it's been over the last 20 years, which you could put that data in, what are the odds that we have another major setback, economic recession? How could that impact my business? We could put in the data like food cost. We could put it, if it was a food restaurant, we could put in, all these series of data points, put that in and say, okay, run this model 1,000 times. And what's my success ratio look like for scalability? So one of the things that as you kind of look at the different data points that we were talking about, right? We were talking about the analytics of gathering the data of betting, right? And if you look at the all the betting institutions that are out there for gambling, right? They take the accumulation of all these games and all these circumstances, and that's how they decide on what the odds are for winning a bet. Right. Well, if you take all that data and you accumulate it over as much as the recorded data of different sports that we can record, or that we can gather, and you put all that together, it's going to give you some pretty darn good analytics to make decisions on, right? So consequently, when it comes to scalability, you can now take, for instance, and I use the example in whether it was Xbox, or I don't remember if it was Xbox or PlayStation, but it was EA game, EA Sports, and it was the Madden football game. What they did is they took an example. I thought it was 10,000. they replayed the game 10,000 times, and it was the projection of I think it started in 2018 or 2019, but they replayed the Super Bowl with those same teams 10,000 times, and the same team won. I don't remember how many times it was, but that was it became a gauge
Yeah.
on who was going to win. And then it was like, well, who was right or wrong, right? Well, it's a 50% odds, but at the end of the day, how close was the score? What was the average score over 10,000 iterations? Or maybe it was 1,000. I don't remember. But again, the same thing. Anytime that you have that much information and you can replay it over and over and over and look for the minutest details each time and then aggregate that information, think about when you're looking to scale a business, as I was mentioning earlier, you could actually now take that data of, okay, let's assume that the economy over the next 10 years, today I've got 3 units of whatever business model that I am in. Again, let's use a restaurant, for example. I've got 3 of them. I want to grow to 10. And the idea is that over whatever span of time, let's assume it's going to take me 5 years to do that. Maybe it's 3 years, 5 years, whatever. But during that period of time, what are the odds that there's going to be an economic setback during that period of time? What are the odds that there's going to be an E. coli breakout? Right? What are the odds that, and whatever variations that you might want to consider, right? Because if we go back and we look at history, we can now gather that data, aggregate it all, put it into a model and say, okay, run this 100 times. And what are my odds for success of scaling my business from this to this?
Yeah.
I could actually predict, right? And say, okay, 69% of the time my success ratio is above a certain threshold or whatever.
Yeah.
So, that's one way you could certainly look at that scenario, but there's so many different, when you have that much data to be able to look at and kind of tie that together, certainly scalability when you look at bringing in people, super scalable when you look at any kind of service-based business that requires, everybody's moved to working from home. We've had conversations about that too, but the working from home, answering phone calls, selling over the phone. If I talked about earlier about customer service, but if I was in a sales role, I'd be super nervous.
Yeah.
If I was at a phone sales role, I would be super nervous.
Yeah.
And, if you think about that from that perspective, a salesperson, the biggest problem a successful salesperson has is overcoming the challenge or concern of asking for the sale.
Right.
Right. So over an accumulation of time, you get better, you improve your skill set, you get better asking certain questions, of reading certain things by tonality or whatever it might be. Imagine how that scales when you have somebody who can, each time they have a sales interaction, they get better.
Yeah.
About reading the customer, reading their concerns, understanding the concerns, of overcoming objections before the objections presented. If you could actually program the software to do that, you'd accelerate the learning curve by, I don't know, 1,000x.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so now everything becomes much more scalable. What would be more interesting is what jobs are out there besides software writing would be required by human beings to do. It literally becomes a point of, what else could we ask it to do?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's one of the things, right? And what you do with that data, ultimately, you still can make choices, right? You can choose to ignore it, like Han Solo, never tell me the odds, or, you can follow it and make better decisions, but
Right.
it definitely helps you scale. And I think one of the greatest barriers to scale that I see when I'm working with clients, I'm sure you do too, is that it's always that point of, when do I hire the next person? And it's, if I hire them before they're, making me money, right, then I'm losing money and I may not be able to afford that. But if I wait too long, now I'm missing out on, increased sales or that big client that I don't have enough people to feed it. So you run into those issues. So how do you fix it? Well, automation and delegation, right? Those are 2 big things. And the only way you can do that is with AI to automate things within your business. And if that frees your people up, now you can delegate more things or increase their bandwidth to take on more projects. And so it is fundamental to how we're going to scale in the future.
Absolutely. 100%.
Awesome. Well, let's kind of wrap it up here, Eric. Kind of a couple things as again, we always try to put ourselves in the mindset of the people listening to this. How can I apply this? Right? AI sounds like this, big nebulous thing. Probably sounds complicated, and frankly, it is. Right? So, how do I apply it? So, a couple things come to mind for me, and then any thoughts that you have as we wrap up here. But number one thing is start to identify challenges in your business. That's kind of the main thing is you don't just go and start grabbing solutions, you tie them to specific challenges. So start thinking about what are challenges that you're facing in your business or anticipate facing in the near future. So that's the first thing. Second thing is then determine which AI solution might help solve that challenge. So we've talked about a number of things from chatbots to machine learning to natural language processing to expert systems like call centers, things like that. So there's AI is a big umbrella, and there's a lot of smaller things within that. So then think about which solutions would then best solve that problem, and then really, unless you work in an IT field, your next step after that is going to be hiring an AI consultant or maybe a full-time specialist to come in and determine options for implementation. And then one of the last things we want to leave our listeners with is develop a security and data governance plan, right? So you're going to have all this data, and we
Yeah.
know government regulations continue to increase around, customer information and the information that we store and how it's stored and how secure it is. So that needs to be a big part of your solution as well. So anything you want to add on that, Eric?
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up well. I think when you look at hiring a consultant, that's going to apply to some businesses, and other businesses to your, as we know, are too small to be able to do that. However, there are other solutions, right? For
Yeah.
instance, like I said, I would tell you that a good business coach that works in my organization, that's one of our expectations, that we're actually doing our due diligence today,
Yeah.
understanding this, breaking it down. Where's the best opportunity to apply? To your point earlier, identify the challenges in your business. We're already recognizing that with existing clients, and we're saying, hey, here's an opportunity to improve this. Here's an opportunity to improve that. And this particular uh, channel or piece of AI, it can fix this.
Yeah.
And then where can we cost effectively get it from?
Yeah.
Who's got available? What's it look like as far as an investment? What's a reasonable investment, right? And so we're already doing some of that due diligence for our clients. So one of the nice things about this process of understanding AI and how it applies to my business and how I can benefit from it is if you're out there and you're doing your research and you ask enough of the right people, you're going to find people that know what's going on and how to apply it accordingly.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge, quite honestly, in my opinion, and the concern that I have is you take somebody who's got a rudimentary understanding of it, and as I mentioned, the early adopters that are trying to capitalize on this technology and the software, there's going to be a lot of overpricing in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? As early adopters that acquire software programs, applications, whatever, they're going to buy it with the intent of reselling it or taking advantage of it, not taking advantage of it in a negative way necessarily, but capitalizing on it. But people will be taken advantage of because they don't know.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I try and impress upon my clients, I should say we try to impress upon our clients, is when you're looking at or investigating technology you don't understand, do it with a partner.
Yes.
Do it
Yeah.
with somebody who can help you adopt and understand. Maybe they only know one step ahead of you, but the two of you collectively are going to have a much better result. If you try because my biggest pet peeve, having been in sales for as long as I've been, one of my biggest pet peeves is the person that sells a product or service that knows darn well that the product or service isn't going to solve the individual's problem, but they want the sale, so they push it anyway. Right? Or worse yet, because you don't know, David, I'm going to sell you this. You're going to get it and then realize you don't have the three other pieces you need to solve the problem that you have. And
Right.
and as a crappy salesperson, I'm totally fine with that, and you'll figure that out on your own. And I hate that. And that's one of the things when it comes to technology. That's why we have the fear that we referenced in the very beginning of the podcast. That's why a lot of people do have that fear. of the unknown and the new technologies, because somebody's going to take advantage of me. Somebody's going to sell me something I didn't need, whatever. But that's where, the benefit of having 2 or 3 other people involved in that decision-making process dramatically reduces,
Yeah.
that tendency to fall for a sales pitch, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, please.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about too, it's important to understand, for somebody to listen to this, you don't have to start getting into AI and set aside, 10 grand and, buy servers into this whole thing. I mean, you can start with Jasper, which is a software you've mentioned. There's so many others with, task scheduling, employee schedule optimization. I mean,
Yep.
you could start for, $29 a month, right, on a trial and just see how it goes and start playing with different things to start solving some of those problems. And as you scale, which becomes easier as you automate, right, then you can look at, okay, how do I bring this in-house, or can I white label this software, right? Or, get an API that connects to my intranet, right? And you can start to do that down the road. But initially, you can start getting a couple applications and make your life so much easier for under $500 a month, under $300 a month, depending on the size of your workforce, and start getting comfortable with it and see what it can do for you. So I think, yeah, great point.
Yeah, and I'd actually go one step further. It's ironic that, as you mentioned, that reference point, using, for instance, a calendar software application, right?
Yeah.
That is a function. That is an AI function, right? That's
Yes.
it's an entry level AI product service,
Yeah.
and consequently, that's what I learned with, right? And I literally, most of that learning took place in the last 2, maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
And I started with the software application. I'm like, I can't afford an assistant yet. The business is growing nicely, but we can't afford that. So let's get this calendar application, right? And then I realized, well, that's not good enough. I need to upgrade. So I get the better one, and then I get that better one, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. How do I live without this, right? And then it's like, well, what else could I consider automating?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what I did as I grew the business. I was familiar with a lot of these technologies because we had these in previous companies. But what I didn't realize was that they had brought down to be cost effective for even the individual solopreneur.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
But the biggest challenge is like, okay, now how do I make them connect? And you're talking about the API connections to how do I make the 2 softwares talk together?
Yeah.
Well, this Chat GPT, which we'll probably have to do a whole session just on Chat GPT as we learn more about this new evolution that's coming in a couple of months. But that application incorporated with those software pieces that you're referencing, when you think about, I literally with the Chat GPT, I've been playing with it, right? I've been using my Jasper, but I have to type it. I have to manually put in what I want it to say, and then it spits out versions of it. When I saw the demo of the Chat GPT, the guy was actually speaking to the software and said, write a blog on this that's approximately 1,500 words on this particular topic using this dictionary.
Nice.
The language from this particular dictionary, with this tone, with this attitude, whatever. And he said all the words to the software, and it literally lines. And I'm going to tell you, it was less than 2 minutes that the entire 1,500 word blog was pulled together.
Wow.
And,
So,
and then you do the old Microsoft Word that would grade it, at what level it was written at. Oh, I want it written at a 5th grade level, 7th grade level, 12th grade level, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
All the things that you would measure that the Microsoft software and Word would use, right? And any of the Word applications or you know what I'm referring to, right? That would have that kind of, you use that data to have the thing written, and it's that fast.
Yeah. So Eric, I got to drop a bombshell on you.
Uh-oh.
I happen to use Chat GPT to write our podcast outline for today.
Did you really?
I did.
And that's where the statistics came from?
So I found the statistics because I wanted to make sure they were relevant. Chat GPT has a limit of things before 2021, but the questions, the key takeaways, the apply it, all Chat GPT. I wanted to underscore how powerful this technology is, that literally leveraged it to prepare for this podcast.
Amazing. After you grilled me for not preparing for the podcast.
That's correct. Yeah. But I automated and
how long did it take you?
So it took me 4 or 5 inquiries, which each one took about 8 seconds. So yeah, about 2 minutes, and then I had to copy and paste it.
And so how much time did you research on the statistics?
That was another 15 minutes.
So 20 minutes all in.
Yeah, but just to kind of what you're talking about. So I would type in, uh, podcast questions about how to apply AI in a business, and then it
And
came up with
literally,
10.
it was that advanced. It literally had that, and that's where these questions came
Yeah.
from.
Yeah, and then what I did was, some of them I didn't really like, so I said, "Give me more questions like the first 2," and then it
Yes.
generated more questions, and then said, "Okay, well, how would an entrepreneur apply AI in their business?" And then it spit out our key takeaways for today. And then how would an entrepreneur go about applying those things and starting to get AI in their business? And it came up there, apply it. So not that we couldn't have prepared this on our own, but I
Sure.
really wanted our listeners to understand. I mean, it's here. I mean,
Yeah.
it is here. It is now. You could be using it to make your life easier. Probably save over an hour and a half of prep time of questions and really thinking through it and coming up with a model. I mean, that's time that I could spend on other projects or clients or generating more revenue. So just I wanted to wait and surprise you with it so that
Nice.
you could see if you
Bravo.
could tell
Well
the
done.
difference. Probably more thorough than my normal prep. So there you
I
go.
was totally impressed. I was like, wow, this is pretty good, David. I'm impressed. Now
Nice,
I
nice.
know.
Well, now you know. I had to come clean with you in our audience, but yeah, it just again underscores the reality of everything we're talking about. So there you
Yeah,
go.
that's amazing. When I saw the demo, it really blew me away because it was very intuitive. It was and the irony is, as I joked about my father over the years. I've told you about his apprehension to adapt technology, and I could teach him how to do this, and I think he'd have fun playing with it, just to do some of the things that he likes to do. Right?
Yeah,
It's amazing how intuitive it was and how simple it was to learn how to use.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah. And what I love about it is, so I you call me crazy, and it wouldn't be the first time you call me crazy, but search engines. This is going to upset some search
Yes.
engines
Yeah,
because what
great point.
happens with the search engine? You put in a search term, and it brings you to links and articles. But with software like Chat GPT, you type in a question, it takes this wide base of knowledge it has, and then it brings it together in a cohesive answer. So you don't have to spend hours searching for information. It does all that for you and summarizes it, and then you can dive deeper in. So I did that a number of times as I was playing with it to say, not on this topic. I was trying to break it actually. I was like, what does it know
Okay.
about medical stuff? What does it know about philosophy? And it was surprisingly accurate. Book summaries, Eric. Book summaries. They
There
say,
you
hey,
go.
give me a summary of the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and it spits it out. I mean, it's
Wow.
incredible what it knows. I mean, it found very few limits as I was playing with it, but it's
Interesting.
remarkable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a great application in and of itself, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
if somebody who's became an avid reader to improve my understanding and knowledge of different things, right?
yeah.
And if I could get the cliff notes of everything.
Yes, yeah. That's yeah. And then all you have. So there's literally give me a summary, and then give me tips on how to apply it, and it just boom, 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 spits it out. It's incredible.
Well,
Yeah,
it's interesting is my philosophy on education, and
I do.
again was listening to Elon, and I don't remember where he was when he was speaking this time, but he said as education as we know it, he predicts that the education industry, meaning higher education, specifically
Yeah,
colleges, universities,
yep.
will cease to exist the way we know it today inside of 10 years.
Bold prediction.
Super bold, right? This is a guy that's took him 4 times to make the shuttle launch and not blow up, but then he spent a grip of money doing it. But but the my point is to his point is that the fact that I don't need to write a term paper ever again.
Right.
That you what your exercise that you just demonstrated to yourself. There's my term paper.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it completely changes that whole thing. We don't need to do the research because the research is there. People have already done it.
Yeah.
The books have been written about these topics. If I need the information, it's literally at my voice's command.
Yeah.
So
And the next version, and you alluded to this earlier, the next version is, I don't know, what is it, 200 or 300 times more advanced than this version now that's
something
out publicly
ridiculous like that.
available.
Yeah.
I mean, it's remarkable. So anyway, I know we can go on for hours and hours. I want to come back to something you said though, Eric. It sounds like you have a coach that's kind of starting to specialize in this. So you want to talk about that maybe for a second, or any of your other kind of coaching solutions for our audience today?
So yeah, not a coach. What we've chosen to do, recognizing that this is an early adopter opportunity as a coach. What we have begun to do is analyze where we think the opportunities will be and what industries this will impact. For what it's worth, financial services, accounting, legal, all these service-based businesses, which by the way is our target audience for my biz coaches, uh, specialist knowledge. There'll still be a need for the really good people, but people, tax preparation. I mean, it gets crazy when you think about how simple this could be. It's data input and data output, right? So all you have to do is put in the specific data and it spits out the answers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's that intuitive, right? So we started looking at that, and okay, where could we easily apply this and look for opportunities to consolidate industries, and go to those particular business owners and say, you're either going to be on the front end of that bell curve or the back end. If you're going to be on the back end, you're going to be an acquisition target. If you're on the front end, you're going to be the acquiring
Yeah.
entity.
Yeah.
And we'd like to help you do that. Are you in a position you'd like to consider that? And so that's how we're going to pivot in 2023 and 2024 with our business model, in selecting the target clients that we go after. So the client that I have is a digital marketing agency introduced me to Jasper. And that's when we started playing with it. He had mentioned to me, well, actually, I had done the research on ChatGPT, and then you and I had some conversations that evolved into this full. Like I did a coaching session with him, and it, like 2 seconds into it, I mentioned ChatGPT, and the entire thing for 2.5 hours was about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And so then we developed a plan to begin to figure out how we're going to leverage that solution in different businesses. And so we're targeting specific businesses that we want to go to, and we want to say, hey, look, we'll help you implement this as a solution, as a solution to your business, and how best to implement it. And we're going to help you roll that out and introduce it. And then, like I said, if you're on the front end of this bell curve, I'm telling you, if it plays out anywhere close to some of the predictions, they're saying, 5 years, 10 years, it will completely uproot certain industries.
Yeah. I totally agree.
And I think that, and I think you're going to see the impact in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like significantly see the impact. So that being said, we see this year as an opportunity to align ourselves with those particular industries. We'll be reaching out to those individuals and saying proactively, we have a marketing campaign, which by the way was used ChatGPT to determine who those clients were. And we have a marketing strategy. We're going to begin to reach out to them and say, hey, look, if you want to be on the front end of this and you need assistance in rolling this out, this is what we're going to be doing with you.
Nice.
And this is how we plan to do it. And this is what it's going to cost you. And it's relatively inexpensive considering what would have to be invested to understand and use the technology and implement it into your business. Because we're already figuring it out for certain business channels.
Awesome. Well, okay. So let's say, Eric, I want to learn more about that. I want to connect with you, one of your coaches, talk about AI or maybe other challenges in my business, opportunities. Where do I go to find out more about My Biz Coaches?
Come see us at mybizcoaches.com.
Okay. Awesome.
You can also find us at YouTube. I don't think we're on TikTok yet. I'm on TikTok, but we're not on TikTok yet. But you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're out there on everywhere. And it's My Biz Coaches on every one of them except Twitter's Biz Coaches.
Gotcha. Cool. Awesome. Well, if you want to learn more about TLG Group, head over to trainleadgrow.com. Would love to talk to you about how AI is impacting how people learn, how it's impacting sales, and a number of other topics, and how we're going to have to lead people differently in an AI world. So definitely
Great.
connect with me there. You can also go on to pretty much any social site, like Eric said, except for me, you'll use at TrainLeadGrow, and we'd love to have you join our community. So don't miss future episodes. Make sure you guys like, follow, and most importantly, subscribe. We have a lot of really great topics coming up, some great interviews that we're actively scheduling right now. And we hope to see you next time on the Biz Coach Show.